The warm air of Beverly Hills smelled of blooming jasmine on the night of June 20th, 1947. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel sat on a floral sofa at 810 North Linden Drive, reading the Los Angeles Times. He was 41 years old, handsome as a movie star, and completely unaware that his time had run out. Outside in the shadows, a military M1 carbine barrel rested silently on the garden trellis. At exactly 10:45 p.m., 9 steel-jacketed bullets shattered the living room window with a deafening crash. One round struck the bridge of his nose and blew his left eye completely out of its socket. The man who had dreamed of building a neon empire in the desert was dead before his body hit the floor. To understand why he had to die, we must travel back to the dirty streets of the Lower East Side. In 1918, a 12-year-old Benny Siegel was already extorting pushcart peddlers for $5 a week. He did not fear the police or the other gangs because he possessed a rage that terrified grown men. It was on these streets that he met a small, calculating boy named Meyer Lansky, who changed his destiny. Lansky was the brain who understood numbers, while Siegel was the brawn who understood only violence. Together, they formed the Bugs and Meyer Mob, a lethal unit that specialized in hijacking rival bootleggers. By the early 1930s, they had helped create the National Crime Syndicate alongside Lucky Luciano. Siegel became a founding member of Murder, Inc., the enforcement arm that killed without hesitation. But the cold alleys of New York could not contain his massive ego or his desire for celebrity status. In 1936, the syndicate sent Siegel to California to organize the rackets on the West Coast. He arrived in Hollywood like a conquering king, befriending actors like George Raft and Cary Grant. He wore silk suits, hosted lavish parties at his mansion, and slept with the most beautiful women in town. But beneath the glamour, he was still a killer who broke the bones of anyone who refused to pay him. His ambition eventually turned toward a dusty, forgotten highway in the Nevada desert called Las Vegas. Siegel saw something no one else could see, an oasis of legal gambling and luxury in the middle of nowhere. He took over a stalled construction project and named it the Flamingo after his girlfriend, Virginia Hill. Virginia was a fiery woman with long legs who loved money just as much as Bugsy loved fame. He promised his mob investors that the hotel would cost $1 million and return millions more. But Siegel knew nothing about construction, and the contractors robbed him blind at every single turn. Beans were delivered by day, stolen by night, and resold to him the next morning for double the price. The budget exploded from $1 million to $6 million, draining the mob's secret bank accounts. Back in New York, the other bosses began to whisper that Siegel was either incompetent or stealing. The Flamingo opened on December 26, 1946, during a torrential rainstorm that kept the stars away. The air conditioning failed, the casino lost money, and the unfinished rooms stood empty and silent. It was a public humiliation that cost the syndicate hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single night. Meyer Lansky begged the other bosses to give his childhood friend one last chance to fix the mess. Siegel frantically borrowed more money, convinced that once the hotel was finished, the profits would flow. But the patience of the Italian and Jewish mob bosses had finally evaporated completely. In December 1946, the heads of the families met in Havana, Cuba, to decide the fate of Bugsy Siegel. Lansky sat at the table with a heavy heart, knowing he could no longer protect his reckless partner. The order was given. The man who built the dream had to be removed so the business could survive. Siegel never saw it coming because his arrogance had convinced him he was bigger than the mob itself. On that final night in Beverly Hills, he was discussing how the Flamingo was finally starting to profit. The hit was clean, professional, and left absolutely no witnesses to identify the shooter. Minutes after Siegel died, 3 of Lansky's men walked into the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. They announced they were the new owners and took control of the casino before the body was even cold. Under efficient management, the Flamingo eventually became the anchor that birthed the Las Vegas Strip. The neon lights that glow today in Sin City are the direct legacy of Bugsy Siegel's feverish vision. He was a sociopath and a murderer, but he was also the architect of modern American entertainment. His death proved that in the world of organized crime, profit always matters more than friendship. The police never solved the murder, and the shooter vanished into the dark history of Los Angeles. Bugsy Siegel paid for Las Vegas with his own blood, leaving behind a city built on sand and secrets. Hit that subscribe button right now if you want more elite breakdowns of the true history behind the mob.